Okay, so to make our panel system, we're going to copy down a lot of components. We will make modifications to them. We're going to determine by how bright it is, by how large that value is, whether we want it to be a solid panel or a glass panel, with using some Boolean logic. Then we're going to make the solid panel or the glass panel, and then finally output it to Revit. If you look, a lot of these definitions are actually just duplicated and relatively simple. So it's a bit painful to go through, I'll have to admit, for the first time user, but I think this will really help with you creating the muscle memory needed to hopefully in the future be able to work with these definitions. And you may not work with them again for many years, so hopefully bear with the experience right now. So let me just zoom in here to the actual specific point where we're going to start working and just kind of discuss what we're going to do again. We're just going to copy down the image processing again. But now instead of making that surface array variable thing as I'd done up here, we're just going to put in values. And they're not going to be 64 by 64 because we're going to make a 1 foot by 4 foot panel. So we're going to sample at 4 foot intervals. So we're actually going to put in that 64 divided by 4, that's 16. So we're going to just change that sampling rate. And we're going to flatten it. That has to do with some of the Boolean logic that we go through later on. And we're going to do something similar with the panel array. We have now the points that we want to generate aren't 64 by 64. They are 16 by 64. So we need to step through and create another coordinate system, or points, and then make that into a coordinate system that we can build panels on. So we'll go ahead and get started with all of that. Actually, I'll zoom in here. You could actually look at this definition if you wanted to and try to lay this out on your own without me chiming in your ear. But if I think you'll get some benefit if you follow through with me on it. So I'm going to drag this off the screen and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the image processing here and I'm going to copy and paste and move that down. And like I said, we had created a surface array up here that was different. One thing I also wanted to call your attention to, I had not run the panels through the Boolean logic to turn it off. So if you go from list and you drag it into panels and then drag it out here and back to that code block, that'll make sure everything is turned off on your top with dots and the surface that we created. So now we're back to our image processing. We're using the same image. But this time we're not doing the sampling is no longer with the code block. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And I'm going to insert, some numbers. I'll duplicate that. And one is going to be, as I said, 16. The other one is the 64. I'm going to drag those into this group. And the 16 will fix into, let me check to make sure I've got this right, the X samples, yep, because we want it to move 4 foot panels horizontally. And then Y samples 64, which will mean we're moving 1 foot vertically. And then we've already transposed that list. We just need to flatten it. So I'm going to go to right click and do flatten. And now we have our new kind of image processing. And if I hit run now, everything's going to happen very quickly because there is nothing actually being processed here right now. But we do get a list of 1024, which is 16 by 64, 16 times 64. So we know things are working okay. Now, once again, we have to create a surface array, but now it's not going to be 64 by 64. I'm going to copy and paste this, and then we'll go ahead and make some manipulations to it. So I've just got to create another set of numbers here. So I'm going to actually delete this one. I'm going to delete the step. And well, let's see if I can copy and paste this. And I'll paste it again. So we have 3 numbers. Let me see if they're not in the group yet. There they are. And so just a little, we want our our thing to work by, we want to step by 4 in one direction and step by 1 in the other direction. But we need two different ranges because we're making 4-foot steps in one direction and 1-foot steps in the other one. So I'm going to copy and paste the range. Oops, not the whole surface array. Okay, so we both want to end at 64, but in one direction we want to step by 4, and in the other direction we want to step by 1. And we're going to feed those in then into, in the first one we're stepping by 4, and that's in the X direction. And then in the other direction we want to step by the Z by the 1 foot, that's going in that vertical direction. And I can go ahead and run this one now. And nothing's showing up because I have the preview off on this. And now you can see how our dots are separated by 1 foot in the vertical direction and 4 foot in the horizontal. Okay, so what we need now is to make a coordinate system to put our rectangles in. So coordinate, and I think it's system dot by origin. And then I'll just kind of roll down here. So what we want to do is just have an input of a point, and that'll just create the origin. So it's by origin. You'll see how they have 3 identical ones by origin. It's the third one down. I'm going to drag that into our group. And I'll move this over. And we're going to take those points now and drag them into as the origin of coordinate systems. Those coordinate systems are going to be used for the rectangles that we're going to make. And so I'll turn off points by coordinate preview. I'll leave the coordinate system on. And when I run this, we now get that kind of axis of all of the coordinate systems that we want to build. So I'll pause here and I'll get set up for doing the panel selection criteria next.